Alright, city service rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. This is about 65 miles off of Port Aransas, Texas. It's about 200 feet of water. I'm jumping in here. This is me. The boat owner, Bo, is going to be jumping in right behind me. It's the two of us diving this rig. This is the set of city service rigs that has, there's three rigs very close together. Two of them are actually connected with a catwalk. Viz was better there. We went to Baker. One of the Baker rigs has been removed. There's only one rig left at Baker. The diving was not any good at Baker, so we moved over to city service. Viz was a lot better. A few more fish. So here we decided not to put the line from the bow to the back to pull ourselves. The currents were pretty mild, so we just jumped off the boat and just kind of swam to the rig. You see all the barracuda. There's always a lot of barracuda on these rigs, but on this particular trip, the barracuda were really stacked up under every rig we went to, and we hit several of these rigs while we were out there. You see me get my gun loaded up here. Sometimes it's a fight to mess with the tip of it. My cable's a little loose. I need to re-cable this gun. That's something I'm about to work on here in a little while, but it doesn't stay on the retainer that well. At this point, I'm trying to swim and mess with the gun at the same time, so I decided I'm just going to clip the gun off, get a hold of the mooring line here, and just pull myself to the rig, and I'll load the gun on the descent. That was Bo Machado you saw there right next to me. That's the boat owner. Man, so many barracuda. I actually point them out. Again, they're just something that we see on every dive, but I mean, there were just so many that it even struck me as odd that there were so many. Alright, last look at the boat. Deflating my jacket, getting ready to start my descent here. You see all them barracuda kind of moving away from us a little bit. This first deck, this first little platform here is probably at about 30 feet. Right now I'm just trying to get down there, get to that first horizontal. Once I get there, I'll go ahead and stop and load my gun, and then continue the descent after I've got my gun loaded. Again, those barracuda are really just stacked up in there. Now this is the depth down to about this first horizontal. You see all the small tropicals, the Creole fish, the Spanish hogfish, the yellow ones you see there, the Sergeant Majors, all that stuff. They tend to be 30 feet, about 30 feet and to the surface, that top end of the water. Once you start getting deeper than 30, 40 feet, you stop seeing those fish. They do tend to stay up shallow. That's a big school of Bermuda chubs there. They're real common. Lots of schools of fish on the rig this day. So there's Bo swimming in the rig, ready to go. Get my last band on here. Safety. Get my tip set. Tuck that in so my tip don't fall off. Alright, I'm ready to shoot. Check my safety, take the safety off, store the pin, pull off the horizontal. Now I'm ready to start descending. Bo's got kind of a head start on me. He's a little bit deeper than me already, but starting to head down. A lot of Bermuda chubs. Again, a lot of barracuda. Did not see a lot of the gray snapper we usually see. There's usually small gray snapper here and there, pods of 2 or 3 fish kind of moving around the rig, but we didn't really see a whole lot of gray snapper. Saw a couple, but that was really about it. Again, currents were pretty mild. And down, I'm just kind of looking around. There's a big barracuda there. I'm not really interested in barracuda though. What I'm looking for is primarily we're hunting for amberjack, or big gray snapper, or a cubera snapper, a cobia, something of that nature. But Ultimately, amberjack season closes soon. Our primary target was amberjack. Horse-eyed jacks there. There was a couple of schools of horse-eyed jacks. You see them on the left there coming into the screen. My depth here is, I think, a little over 100 feet. You see that dirty layer. Water depth is about 200 feet. That dirty layer is at about 120. Once you got down into that, the viz got pretty low. So I tend to hunt just above that dirty water line. And I'm looking for snapper, big snapper, to come up. They have a habit of hiding down in that dirty water, and what they'll do is, you'll see them kind of come up just enough to get a look at you and go back down into the murk, but you'll see them as they come up and go back down. We really didn't see any snapper coming up out of the murk. But again, this is at about 130. The bottom's 200. That's a lot of water between there and the bottom. We did catch a lot of red snapper fishing on the surface in between dives that we had to throw back because the season's closed. So we know where they were down there. They just didn't come up 70 feet up off the bottom to meet us at the top of that murk layer. So it was a lot of murky water. See, I'm just hunting. I'm waiting for an amberjack or something like that to come up out of the murky water to come investigate me. Got to check my gauges regularly. Kind of deeper here. The air usage is on the high end, so using air up real quick. So again, more horse-eyed jacks, Bermuda chubs, things like that. The usual suspects. Not much of that's really worth shooting. Those are horse-eyed jacks there. That's a big squirrel of horse-eyed jacks with the yellow tails. You kind of see the difference between the clear water and that murky layer, kind of from about 120-ish all the way to the bottom. Barracuda always hanging out. No matter where you look, there's barracuda. And they're usually not far away. Alright, so you see the bubbles down there. That's Bo. He went down there into that murk layer. I kind of stayed up a little bit shallower to get a little more time out of the dive. He went down there in that murk, and it paid off for him. He ended up coming up with an amberjack. So I never even saw an amberjack on this dive. We actually did two separate dives. I blended into this one video. But on this dive, I never saw any amberjack, and he actually came out of the murk with one. So bravo to him for that. At this point, again, I'm just kind of sitting back. I'm waiting. You see Bo. There's Bo. I just realized he was up above me in the water column. A lot of fish, a lot of activity, just not a lot of stuff worth shooting at. So at this point, I'm kind of decided you see that little tilt? He kind of tilted to the left. He's kind of giving a display to me there, that barracuda. I don't really shoot barracuda. I don't really want to eat them, so I'm not going to shoot them. I don't shoot things I don't eat. So, but again, didn't see a whole lot down there. Not much coming up out of the murk to come take a look at me. Barracuda all over the place. Did not see any late season. Just kind of late in the season, but it wouldn't be unusual to see cobia, but we did not see any at all. You see all the small little damselfish, little clouds of little bitty tiny fish right up against the rig there. A lot of those are damsels. There's some chromis, things like that. Most of them are damsels though, and blennies. Creole fish are real common. You can see a lot of them fish here. Spanish hogfish are extremely common. There's a lionfish. I'm poking at him, trying to kill him. Invasive species. He just took off and went up underneath. I kind of saw him do it. I don't really feel like chasing him. But the reason I'm poking at him, you see all the damsels in the hole there. The reason I'm poking at him, they're an invasive species, and I'm just literally just trying to injure him. I don't really want to shoot him because then he gets stuck on the shaft, and I'd probably get stuck, and they're venomous, and I would probably ruin my day if I were to get stuck trying to get him off of my spear shaft. So just kind of took a poke at him. He swam off, so I left it at that. So I'm kind of checking the deck here. There's lots of little small grouper, little rock hinds, little grouper with speckles all over them. They're real small. They're real hard to shoot without hitting the rig, but you need kind of a small gun for that. I've got this big gun, and it's just too much for those little fish. Now here I've shot at a gray snapper, and he tore off, so I'm about to reload. I haven't really seen anything, but of course, here come the amberjack. Now that my gun's unloaded, I'm not ready. So now I'm like in a hurry. I'm trying to get my gun loaded. I'm trying to do it smoothly so I don't mess it up and take even longer. Of course, it comes swimming by me right when my gun's unloaded. I'm not ready. Here we go. I get the last band on. Get that back out to that last notch. Check my safeties on. I need to get my tip on. Loading this gun is a whole procedure. It's kind of a disadvantage that it takes so long, but that's just the way it is. So there, now I got my tip on. My tip won't fall off. Now I'm ready to shoot. Check my air, and the amberjack are gone, and they're nowhere to be found. They are completely just gone. And that's the way it goes sometimes. So here I'm swimming toward Bo. This was actually right after he had shot his grouper. I'm kind of swimming over toward him, looking around, looking down in the murk, and on the outside I can see 3 fish out here. Right there, those are African pompano, and they're on my bucket list. I have yet to shoot one. I rarely even see them, and they look pretty good size. So here I'm trying to, they're swimming away from me, so now I'm playing catch up. I'm trying to swim around and get caught up to them before I swim out toward them. I don't want to spook them, but obviously that's exactly what I just did, and they swam out further away from me. I don't really want to exit and go outside the rig too far, and then end up shooting one of these fish and have him pull me out even further. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off, kind of get back behind the rig here, give them their space. They're headed toward that far corner ahead of me, so what I want to do is I'm going to head toward that corner, and as they come around that corner, I'd really like to try to just ambush them, let them come around to me, and shoot them as they come around the corner. So I'm going to leave them be. I'm going to head toward that corner, and I'm assuming I'm smarter than these fish are at this point. But now I'm here. I'm kind of giving them a second to come up. They should be coming around here pretty soon, and I'm looking, and where are they? Okay, they're, nope, that's a barracuda, and they're gone. Where'd they go? Okay, they double back. I'm not smarter than the fish. The fish were smarter than me this time. So they double back. They got away from me. I did not get to shoot my African pompanos dive. So here, coming back up, I'm getting up a little bit shallower now, toward the end of the dive. You see the horizontals, the little platform there between the the vertical pipes, and all the smaller fish is a real good indicator that you're getting up shallower. There are lots of little blennies and things going on the rig itself. The GoPro's not so great at capturing those. I don't have the macro lens for it, so it's better for big wide shots like this where you can see all the way through the rig. Most of those are Bermuda chubs, really dark meat. They're not worth eating. They're not worth shooting for anything. I wouldn't even use them for bait, to be honest. Still watching, still hoping a cobia is going to swim up to me before we make it back to the surface. But went deep, checked it out deep for a while. Started running out of bottom time. So start working our way up nice and slow. Gain time by coming up shallower. There's an oyster. Considered bringing that oyster home, but ultimately decided not to try to carry it back and open my pocket and put it in there and everything else. So I just kind of sent it to the bottom with the rest of the oysters on the bottom. I do try to be careful about where I put my hands on this rig. You can see me, I am kind of grabbing a hold of the rig, and some of that stuff is alive. Some of it's like polyps and things like that. Some of it's just oyster shell. I do try to avoid grabbing the polyps and just touch it where there's shell. That stuff is pretty delicate. If there weren't any current at all, I probably wouldn't touch the rig at all, but usually I ended up, putting a couple fingers on the rig here and there to help hold on, just to help avoid me having to fight the current too badly. Here you see all the typical shallower water fish, all the sergeant majors with the stripes, and there's Bo. He's got his amberjack hanging off of him there. Bo had a really good day spearfishing. This was pretty good. You can see pretty deep there. You see quite a bit of the rig structure going down pretty far. Right, so here's a different dive. Here's Bo. This was prior. This was the first dive here. Yeah, that amberjack you just saw was the second dive. But here was Bo on the first dive. This is a little bit of a shot of him with his grouper on his stringer. He's got a gray snapper on there also, but the gray snapper is the smaller fish. You see him there. He's kind of getting his gun ready. Alright, so here I've kind of swam away from Bo a little bit, looking out toward the surface. I've kind of done my safety stop. At this point, I'm getting ready to head to the surface and head back to the boat. We're both getting kind of low on air, so give him a final okay. He gives me the okay back. We both kind of start heading to the surface from here. And you never stop looking back. Sometimes you'll be on the way back to the boat at the end of the dive, and a cobia swims up to you when you're right there at the boat. So kind of wait till the last minute to unload the gun and everything else. The hunt's never really over till you hand that gun in the boat and you jump in the boat. So you tend to stay ready. Alright, so here we're making our ascent. Here especially, I'll tend to hold on to the rig because of the wave action. Will pull you up and down really quickly. Don't really get too agitated like that after diving so deep. But that last 10 feet here, I'll let go of the rig and just kind of free descend. Try to make that last few feet, the ascent, really slow. People tend to rush that last few feet on the ascent, but nice and slow. Finally break the surface here. You see the boat out there in the distance. It's always easiest just to grab the rope, pull yourself. Bo's got fish on his stringer, but he's not done hunting. He's got eyes on that barracuda right there in front of him. And bam, he just popped it. I wasn't ready for that though, and the barracuda swam toward me. I was afraid I was going to get wrapped up in the line. So here I kind of turn around and I swam backwards. Give him space to kind of fight that fish without, the fish swimming around, getting the two of us tied together in the cable. You can even see the rig way out from the boat here, so visibility was really good. So I backed off a little bit. Bo's there fighting his barracuda. Just gonna let him get that under control before I try to get back into the boat at this point. You see the other barracuda down there getting excited, thinking something's going on, coming up closer to get a look. I think at one point an amberjack came up, after he shot this barracuda. That might have been what we were seeing a second ago. I remember an amberjack coming up, taking a look after he shot this barracuda, like he wanted a piece. So at this point, I'm reloading one band on the gun. He's having trouble with this fish. That fish isn't stopping. So I'm going to reload the gun and try to get a shot on this fish just to help put it down a little bit quicker so we can get it knocked down, get it put in the boat. My line kept getting caught here. I couldn't get finally got that loose. By the time I get it ready, they've already handed the gun to the people in the boat. Right here, I'm too close, so I'm trying to backpedal so I can get a shot. But they've already handed the gun into the boat, and the people in the boat just pull the cable up, and I just go ahead and pull the fish out of the water. So I don't bother taking my shot at this point. I can go ahead and unload my gun, pull that band off. There's a piece of the barracuda's gills floating by. So fish is on board. They're finishing putting him in the box here. Oh, no, they're not. He's on deck. Alright, handing the gun in. And that was it. It was a pretty good dive. Came home with amberjack, grouper, and gray snapper. So, good day on the water and great diving.
Handle just a